This is blasphemy. This is madness.
Madness. This is Sparta!
The Battle of Thermopylae was a battle between the alliance of the Greek city-states led by Sparta and the Persian Empire. The battle took place over 7 days in September of 480 BC at the narrow coastal pass of Thermopylae. The Persians were marching to invade Greece to get revenge from the first Persian invasion, which ended by a victory of Athens at the Battle of Marathon in 490 BC. The Persians had gathered together a huge army and navy set out to conquer all of Greece. An Athenian had come up with the idea that the allied Greeks stopped the advance of the Persian army at the pass of Thermopylae, while they also blocked the Persian navy at the Straits of Artemisium. The Greeks had about 7,000 men blocking the only way the Persian army could march to get to Greece. The Persian army had about 200,000 men. The Greeks successfully held off the Persians for a total of 7 days, with only 3 days of battle. The Persians successfully defeated the Greek army on the 7th day. The Spartans had a good army due to their weapons and killing power. One of the main weapons was a 3-pound 30-inch sword. They used it for close combat when the enemy broke through their first line of defense. Another weapon, which was common for a Spartan to have, would be a spear, which was 70 inches long. They would stay behind their shield and use the spear to kill the enemy before they got close. Also, Spartans would use their shield as a weapon because the shield could injure or kill enemies. The Spartan army used a phalanx formation in warfare to fight. The phalanx formation is 12 men deep and as wide as it needed to be to stop the Persians from getting around them. When the Spartan army met with the Persian army, it was basically a huge shoving match. The frontline men had their shields against the Persian men. If a frontline man went down, then another guy jumped in and took his spot quickly. If the phalanx formation failed, the whole army would be quickly defeated because they would be unorganized. The Spartans did not make big overhead slashes like you see in the movie, but they jabbed for the inner thigh, which would penetrate the femoral artery, letting you die in about 15 seconds from blood loss. The Persians, on the other hand, sent inexperienced soldiers to the front lines of the phalanx formation and had their experienced archers fire upon the heads of the Greeks. On the other hand, the Persian troops wielded shields, but unlike other soldiers, Persian troops were far more reliant on shields for protection than others. Since armor and helmets were rarely used, shields were usually the only piece of defensive equipment that a Persian soldier would possess. Unfortunately, traditional Persian shields were rarely up to the task, being made of wicker and leather. The Persians relied heavily on missile troops and cavalry in battle, equipped with javelins and recurved bows. Slingers were also used in battle by the Persians, although they were relatively small in numbers compared to the archers. Infantry used spears as their main weapons, swords being reserved for the more elite units.
Spartans are renowned warriors of their time period. Even to this day, they are known as the most feared warriors of all time. Spartans' careers in the military started at the age of 7, and only boys were allowed to join in the military and train to be soldiers. At age 7, the boys were taken from their mothers and put into packs. The packs were sent to military camps that resemble much of present-day boot camps. They were thrown into extremely harsh conditions from the start with little food and clothing. Since they had little supplies, the boys were encouraged to steal, and if they were caught, they were punished. But they weren't punished for stealing, but punished for being caught. The boys were taught to read and write at a young age and were also extremely competitive when it came to sports. When the boys hit age 12, they were considered youth. Their physical education was greatly intensified and their discipline was harsher. The boys were also loaded with extra tasks. They walked barefoot and were only allowed to dress in a single tunic during summer and winter. Adulthood was reached at the age of 18. The now young adults served as trainers for the younger boys. Military service became eligible at 20 years of age. Most men spent their time in the barracks until the age of 30, even if they were married. Typically, military duty lasted until the age of 60, but in some rare cases older men served during time of warfare. Besides their extremely harsh training and morals, there is one thing that may prove to be the most vital in putting fear into the hearts of their enemies. Their mothers used to give them shields with the saying, "Return with it," or "Carried on it." The Spartans' own mothers said that their children should die in battle rather than drop their shields and abandon a battle. The fact that their own mothers were perfectly okay with the idea of their sons dying is astounding. This motivation fueled the Spartans and was one of the many reasons as to why they were so feared and respected. Without their training, the Spartans wouldn't have been as nearly as successful in warfare. The Persian Empire is known worldwide as a great kingdom, but in reality, little is known about their armies. They were known to have some of the most feared and largest armies of the time period, but other than that, not much is known about them. They were, however, trained very well. They established an empire that covered Asia Minor and many other territories.
This day of battle is considered the fifth day that the Persians arrived at Thermopylae. After tons of thinking, Xerxes decided to attack all of the Greeks. The first order of battle was to fire a barrage of arrows toward the Greeks. However, the Greek army used their bronze shields to deflect every arrow away. After the failure of shooting the arrows, Xerxes sent a force of 10,000 Medes and Scythians to fight the Greeks, take the prisoner, and bring them in his presence. While preparing to fight, they were by the Phoenician wall and the armies were standing shoulder to shoulder. The Greeks were in their typical phalanx as well. Even though the Persians had spears, they were too short to engage battle with the Greek hoplites. To prevent fatigue during the day, the units from each city were traded in and out. The outcome of day one was so many Medes were killed that Xerxes stood out of his seat and watched the Greeks kill the majority of the Persian force. On the second day of battle, Xerxes sent his army back to the battlegrounds where they had fought the day before to try and finish them off. Before doing this, he thought that they were too wounded for battle and would be defeated easily. On the other hand, the Persians, being a day experienced with battle, were ready to fight again and weren't afraid of being defeated, even though they did not have the man advantage. They were ready to fight and would do anything they could to defeat the enemy. Seeing their great will and motivation to come up with a victory, Xerxes quickly withdrew and headed back to camp. Fortunately for the Persians, a trader by the name of Ephialtes told them about a special way to Thermopylae where they would not be seen. The special path would take them to the mountains where the Greek army of Xerxes would not be able to spot them. Thinking the Persians had come to attack the Phoenicians, they retreated to a nearby hill. Seeing this, Leonidas called a council of war the next morning. The Greeks were ordered to withdraw or simply told to leave. Although these orders were given, about a group of 700 men revolted against the orders and chose to commit themselves to fight. Since they were Spartan men, they were not breaking any laws by not listening to the orders. Being a Spartan, Leonidas wanted to die defending his home. Later that day, a Persian force consisting of light infantry and cavalry charged at the front of the Greek phalanx. During the midst of this fight, Leonidas and Xerxes' two brothers were killed in the fight. All the spears were mangled and broken by nightfall. The Greeks were now weak and Xerxes took advantage of the moment. He ordered the wall to be destroyed and shortly thereafter all the Greeks were dead. With a clear path to Thermopylae, the Persians took it over.